She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather, as if the words didn't carve straight through the center of me. I'm exhausted by your need to share everything. Real men don't need constant communication, and honestly, I can't marry someone that needy. Her voice was flat, practiced, rehearsed long before she ever stood in front of me. I remember the stillness afterward, a silence so sharp it felt surgical. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself. I only nodded as if she diagnosed me with some gentle, curable disease. Inside, something fractured, quietly, cleanly, like frost cracking across a window pane. But outside, nothing, just breath, controlled, measured, precise. Later that night, she slept beside me, completely unaware that I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her breaths, wondering how many lies were nested in her sudden disgust for my voice, my thoughts, my presence. The next morning, I stopped speaking first, stopped explaining, stopped sharing, stopped offering any window into my internal world. And she didn't notice, not at first. But the thing about silence is that it expands, fills every room, every corner. And mine grew large enough to swallow the truth she'd tried to hide from me. It was in that silence that I first felt the shift, the faint, unmistakable scent of betrayal. I didn't react. I just watched, listened, collected the shape of what she had never meant for me to see. The world she thought she could keep behind my back. I learned quickly, silence was not the absence of communication. It was its sharpest form. The clues began small. Her late-night work calls, spoken in a voice she didn't use with me anymore. The sudden need to lock her phone. The nervous flick of her eyes toward notifications she tried to hide. Then there were the disappearances, the errands that took twice as long, the showers immediately after coming home, the way she wouldn't meet my gaze when I asked how her day went. I didn't ask twice, didn't push, didn't behave like the needy man she despised. I let her talk herself into comfort, into complacency, into believing I had folded inward and given up. Meanwhile, I cataloged everything. Every hesitation, every slipped name, every misplaced hour. And always, the same cold question echoed through me. If she can't stand the sound of my truths, what lies has she been speaking into someone else's ear? There was a date on a receipt she accidentally left in her purse, a restaurant we'd never visited together, 2 wine glasses, 1 dessert, shared. There was a second toothbrush in her car's glove compartment, a cologne she didn't recognize in the fabric of her scarf. But it was the phone records that carved the suspicion into certainty. Hours of calls to a number I didn't know, almost always when I wasn't around, always during the time she said she wanted space. I felt the betrayal settle inside me like ice. Not rage, not grief, just cold, lucid awareness. She wanted less communication, then I gave her none. Not emotionally, not verbally, not even through expression. And in that void, I saw her real self take shape, guilty, nervous, fidgeting under the weight of the silence she created. I didn't need her confession. I only needed proof. I moved quietly, deliberately. A DNA kit arrived first. Not because there was a child, but because I needed to know how far the deception stretched. Her reaction when she saw the package, that thin tremor of panic, told me more than any test could. Then came the phone records, the synced backup from her laptop, the photos she thought she had deleted. All retrieved without raising my voice, without touching her, without even breaking my routine. I studied everything at night while she slept, my eyes adjusting to the glow of the screen, my heartbeat steady, my breath calm. I became a surgeon dissecting the cadaver of our relationship. The man she'd been calling wasn't a stranger. He was someone she'd once sworn she barely knew. someone she had laughed off when I mentioned noticing how he looked at her. And the messages? They weren't overtly romantic, not enough to be obvious, not enough to be incriminating, but intimate enough to expose her truth. Miss hearing your voice. Wish I could talk right now. Complicated at home. Every word a needle. Every line a thread stitching a wound I refused to let bleed. Meanwhile, she grew uneasy. My silence unsettled her. My careful detachment made her restless. She started hovering near my phone, watching my expressions, asking questions she pretended were casual. I answered nothing. I let her feel the weight of the void she demanded, let her choke on it. The full evidence arrived on a Thursday morning. Phone logs, screenshots, a recorded call she didn't know had been saved. Everything in one place. Undeniable. Quietly devastating. I printed the conversation transcripts and placed them on the kitchen table. When she walked in, she froze, eyes darting from the pages to me as if she'd stepped into the wrong version of her life. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I simply slid the top page toward her and said, "Tell me what part of this I misunderstood." Her hands trembled, her voice cracked. She tried to deny everything at once, a frantic rush of words she no longer had the skill to control. But I stayed absolutely still, unmoved, listening to her unravel line by line. And when the truth finally broke out of her in desperate, stumbling fragments, I felt nothing. No anger, no triumph, just certainty. The final blow wasn't the evidence. It was the silence that followed. I waited until she stopped crying, until her excuses dissolved into a shaky whisper of regret. Then I spoke the words she never saw coming. "You're right." She blinked, confused. "You said real men don't need constant communication, so I stopped sharing." I stood, walked past her, and opened the door as the international moving company arrived. Crew stepping into the hallway, boxes in hand. Her face collapsed. What's happening?" I looked at her the way someone looks at a stranger who forgot their place in the story. "Just being a real man, like you suggested," I said quietly. "And finally making the best decisions for myself." Her mouth opened, then closed. A fish gasping for breath in air too thin to save it. She realized in that instant that my silence had never been retreat. It had been preparation. While the movers packed, she followed me from room to room, pleading, apologizing, bargaining with memories she had already poisoned. I didn't respond, didn't slow down. When she realized I was leaving the country, selling the house, closing every shared account, her knees buckled as if I'd stabbed her. But I hadn't. I'd simply stopped letting her feed on the pieces of me. By the time the truck doors shut, she was only a faint echo behind me, a consequence, not a companion. I walked to the car, felt the cold settle cleanly in my chest, and finally understood the gift of her cruelty. She wanted a silent man, so I became one. And in that silence, I found the version of myself she never deserved.